Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you with us today. While we're waiting for others to join us, please go to the chat box at the bottom of your screen and enter your name and where you're dialing in from. We'd love to have a sense of who you are. So others will be joining us, and we'll give them a minute before we get started. So go to the chat box, enter your name and your location, and that'll give us a sense of who you are and where you're coming in from. My name is Doug Dixon. I'm board chair of Encore Boston Network, and we help people over 50 make a difference through work, through service, and social action. We're excited to be a part of this webinar today. So welcome. Glad you could join us. We are extremely grateful to AARP Massachusetts and retirementjobs.com for their sponsorship of today's webinar. And you'll be hearing more about them in a few minutes. This webinar is, Kendra, can you advance the slides? Great. This webinar is brought to you through a collaboration of 8 organizations. I want to recognize them now. AARP Massachusetts, if you can pull up that slide, Kendra. Age Friendly Boston and the Age Strong Boston Commission, Age Friendly Institute, the 50+ Job Seekers Networking Groups, retirementjobs.com, the Massachusetts Executive Office of Elder Affairs, Operation Able, and of course, Encore Boston Network. So thank you to those collaborators that have worked together now to pull together 5 of these webinars. We all believe strongly in the value that older workers create and applaud employers that recognize that value and seek to create mixed-age workplaces. You can learn more about these organizations and by visiting their websites, and we encourage you to do so. You can find out more about Encore Boston Network at our website, which is encorebostonnetwork.org. And while you're there, check out other events that we will be holding and sign up for our monthly newsletter and join. It's free and easy. Today, our focus is on work. And we know that continued work is important for people over 50 because of income, but also because of the meaning that it creates and the value that it creates in our economy and in society. So we encourage you to be a part of this work as well as benefiting from it. Our agenda today includes 3 sections. First, we'll hear from Jody Shu, our moderator, also monitor, I suppose, whom I'll introduce in a moment. She will be joined by Kara Cohen of AARP Massachusetts and Tim Driver of the Age Friendly Institute to talk about programs that identify and will help you find age-friendly employers. Then we'll hear from our panel of 3 age-friendly employers. And then in a final segment, we'll open the floor to your questions. So as they occur to you, enter them into the chat, and we will, here's where Monitor comes in. We'll monitor your questions and maybe even be able to work them into the early part of the program. We have a large group here today, so I have a few suggestions for how to make the webinar go smoothly. First of all, we're using the webinar format of Zoom today, which is a little bit different than the version you may be used to. Everybody will be on mute, and you can communicate to us as well as to each other through the chat. And I would point out in the chat that there are 2 options. You can address a question or a comment to everyone, or you can select the panelists to send your question to. So be aware when you send your question, whether you're sending it to everyone or just to the panelists. As I noted earlier, you can make comments to each other, but you can also address questions through the chat at the bottom of the screen. This event is being recorded, and we will be sending an email to all attendees as well as everyone who signed up for the webinar in the next few days. That will include the recording, will include the slides, and it will include references that have been cited during the course of the webinar. So you don't have to take a lot of notes. If you don't catch something, it'll be coming to you in a few days. And it'll also be posted on our website so that you can take a look at that into the future. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Jody Hsu. Jody is Executive Director of the Age Friendly Institute. She previously served as the Director of Age Friendly Rhode Island, a statewide advocacy and engagement initiative based at Rhode Island College. Jody holds a master's in public health degree from Boston University School of Public Health, where she teaches healthcare finance. And she has a BA from Harvard College. She is a National Advisory Board member of the Thomas J. Dodd Research Center at the University of Connecticut. She's a trustee of Rhode Island chapter of the Nature Conservancy and an elected member of her town planning board. So as you can see, she has a well-rounded background, eminently qualified to moderate our session today. We're thrilled and honored to welcome Jody as our moderator. And now over to you, Jody.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm so happy to be here. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. We're so happy to have you join this important and very timely conversation. Over the past 2 years, the economy and job market have gone through obvious and extreme changes, and we're looking ahead to further change over the coming months. The good news is that unemployment has gone down, including for older workers, but we know that those results are unevenly distributed, including for people over 50. Some have found jobs they're happy with, some have found jobs that don't fully or appropriately use their skills and experience, and others have yet to find work. So there's good news and bad news in the current job market. But there is one broad trend we're focusing on today. The strength of the economic rebound and the shortage of skilled workers has encouraged larger numbers of employers to look at the experience of older workers with new interest. A growing number of employers understand the value of older workers, and they have intentionally set out to recruit and retain them in the workplace. Our purpose together today is to showcase 3 of these age-friendly employers, each of whom have taken 2 specific steps to qualify for today's panel. They've signed the AARP Employer Pledge, and they have qualified as a certified age-friendly employer. We'll come back to those 2 programs in a moment. But first, I want to remind those who may not be aware that this is the 5th Age-Friendly Employer Forum we have offered over the past 18 months. Over the course of those 5 forums, we have showcased 13 employers, as you can see here on your screen. These employers continue to hire people over 50, and we encourage you to check the positions they have available. We'll be sending you this list in a follow-up email, and you can also find them on the Encore Boston Network website under Age-Friendly Employers. This past week, the Age-Friendly Institute had the pleasure of announcing that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts became the first state in the country to be certified as an age-friendly employer. Listen now as Governor Charlie Baker explains why the state has taken this important step.
We've taken another step with regard to this. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts as an employer has been designated an age-friendly employer, and we're the first state in the nation to achieve that objective. That was delivered by the Age-Friendly Institute, and Jeff, are you in here somewhere? So Jeff McHugh is the head of human resources in state government, which means he oversees 42,000 people who never think they get exactly what they want out of state government. But he and his team and everybody across the 250 agencies that exist in the executive branch have been very dedicated and committed to this challenge. And I was reading the sort of checklist, workbook, whatever you want to call it, that the Age Friendly Institute puts an employer through to get designated. It's a lot of work, and I'm really glad Jeff did it and not me. But the point here is this is not some flag waving thing. This is something where you really have to demonstrate that you've committed to this and that you are doing the things that are required to be successful in providing an age-friendly experience for everybody who works in your organization. Now, in state government, we have a significant number of people who are over the age of 50 who work in state government. And that certainly makes it something that's a little more important to us as an employer generally. But I really do believe that if you're going to want other folks to play by a certain standard and a certain set of rules and a certain set of expectations, you need to play by them too. And that was one of the reasons why we went at this pretty hard, and we're thrilled to have been designated and to be the first state to be designated as such. We also put a pretty nice number in our fiscal 23 budget for the councils on aging. It looked to me like the House did a pretty good job with that one too, which is also nice. But I'll just close with this. I think I really do believe that this is going to be one of the most challenging and at the same time opportunistic elements of sort of life in the US and in Massachusetts over the course of the next 20 or 30 years. How do we respond proactively and intentionally to the fact that we have a lot of people who are up and about and doing interesting things and are actively engaged, who are over the age of 65 and who represent a very significant piece of our population? I think it's a great opportunity, but at the same time, it's a big challenge. And I can promise you this, I fully expect Massachusetts will be fully engaged in this and will continue to try to be a national leader.
Great. Thanks, Kendra. The significance of this step taken by the state really can't be overstated. Here are a few key takeaways. Number one, all of the 42,000 plus state employee positions are now open to people 50 and over. The designation acknowledges the demographic shift that is reducing the availability of younger workers and the recognition of the value of experience in the important contribution that people over 50 can make to our economy and to meeting the needs of state government. With this move, the state is saying to other employers and to other states that this is the wave of the future and it's time to get on board. We're very grateful to Governor Baker for taking the lead on this and encourage you to take a look at employment opportunities offered by state government. And we'll include a link to those job listings in our follow-up as well. Now, we want to pivot to sharing some information specifically about the Certified Age-Friendly Employer Program and the AARP Employer Pledge Program. All of the 13 panelists that have participated in these forums in the past, as well as the 3 we'll meet shortly today, have been recognized by both the Certified Age-Friendly Employer Program and the AARP. With us today are 2 colleagues whose organizations are working to support older workers. Tim Driver is the president of the Age Friendly Institute, and Kara Cohen is the manager for community outreach and volunteer engagement for AARP Massachusetts. And they're joining us to talk about these 2 programs. So Tim, let's start with you.
Jody, thank you very much. So if you can put the slides back up, Kendra, I will talk through those a little bit. And before I jump in here, I just want to add one additional note on Governor Baker's announcement and the process of the state being certified as an age-friendly employer. First of all, it should be noted that we're fortunate to do this work. We serve a national audience at the Age Friendly Institute, but we're based here in the Boston area, and we're fortunate to do this work in Massachusetts, where there's been such strong leadership from Governor Baker on the topic of aging. It's noteworthy, too, that the state of Massachusetts has a much higher than the national average percentage of employees over the age of 50. So you heard him reference that. And to put a number on it, it's in the mid 40s in terms of percentage versus the national average in the mid 30s. So it's noteworthy, and perhaps one of the areas you should, if you're thinking about new work, it's an area that you might want to consider, because they are among the welcoming employers. So if you can advance the slide, Kendra, the Certified Age-Friendly Employer Program exists for the purpose of helping older adult job seekers save some time and perhaps save some agony by first knocking on the door of employers more likely to welcome them than to shun them. And that can be real. Age can be an impediment in the job search, and this program is in existence to help older adult job seekers navigate around age discrimination in the workplace. It's been in place for 15 years or a little more now, and we're very excited about the path that it's on. Obviously, Governor Baker's announcement is important. That announcement was also quickly followed by a congratulatory set of remarks and validation from former mayor of Boston and now Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh. And the program itself is all rooted in HR, benefits, and compensation. That's the background of the people, including myself, who created the program. And it's been widely recognized by the U.S. Senate Aging Committee, and as you've seen, by the state of Massachusetts, but most importantly, by the employers themselves. So these are employers that are going after it for a certain number of reasons. And I'll kind of tick through them, because it's important for you to know as a job seeker what they're looking for and why they're doing this. So there's maybe three main drivers. Number one, DE&I, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, is probably at its highest pace ever. It started back in the 1970s. It now includes age at most large employers that want to have a comprehensive approach to their diversity programs. Beyond that, obviously it's a tight labor market, but older adults turn over at a much, much lower rate than younger adults. And you might not know that, but when you sit across the table in an interview with a potential hiring manager, you should just know that one of the things they see in you is the potential that your tenure is going to be, according to government data, 3 times longer than a younger person who might be looking to jump to the next thing. So most older adults, if they find themselves with a fair experience and a good working conditions, are more likely to stay on the job. So that's another thing that's driving these employers, and important for you to know. Up here on the set of slides is the standards by which we measure employers and have them become certified. You can kind of compare this program. You're going to hear about the AARP Employer Pledge. You can also compare it to sort of the JD Power ratings. And the point here is these are employers that are proactively recruiting and retaining people over 50. We're measuring these organizations on a set of areas that can be easily quantified, and also other areas that are less easily quantified, but these are qualitative commitments, right up from the C-suite. So very often, even in some of America's largest employers, because of the importance on their workforce culture and the depth of their commitment to this, it is literally the CEO who is signing off on this decision of theirs, because it has to do with their culture, their workforce strategy, and the need for them to, in many cases, ship product. So if you can jump to the next slide, Kendra, where can you find some of these employers? Well, there's 2 ways I'm going to describe to get access to these job listings. One is retirementjobs.com, which has hundreds of thousands of job listings that change every single day. And those include paid jobs, but also volunteer positions and so-called gig jobs. There's also reviews and ratings and articles and supports of various kinds. There's 1.3 million job seeker members around the country who are taking advantage of this. And, if you look around, you'll see on the web, tons and tons of coverage of not only the website, but also the organizations that are part of the website. And then another way to jump into this, if you can advance the slide, Kendra, is through agefriendly.org. Agefriendly.org is a consumer-facing website oriented to the needs of older adults on 3 areas of age friendliness. One is on the topic of where to live in your later years, specific places, but also towns and communities. It's also the best places to get care. And these are care organizations that have stood up to the standards of being an age-friendly health system, and then also jobs. So this is another way to navigate into the job listings from employers that have been designated as age-friendly. So I'm going to stop there and hand it back to Jody.
Thanks, Tim. And Kara, I think you're up, Kara, with the AARP of Massachusetts.
Thank you, Jody. Thanks for teeing me up. Hello, everyone. I'm glad that you could make today's session, and we're thrilled to be sponsoring the 5th such webinar with Encore Boston Network and all the great collaborators who care about this issue. I'm the manager for outreach and volunteer engagement for AARP Massachusetts. And just a little bit about AARP. I'm sure a lot of you know that AARP is the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering Americans 50 and older, basically to help you choose how you live as you age. And we work to strengthen communities, and we do a lot of advocacy on things that matter to families across the Commonwealth and across the country. We have a focus on health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. And on the advocacy front, some of our key areas of focus are on lowering the cost of prescription drugs, advocating for nursing home and long-term care reform, and for financial support for caregivers. Now, a critical component of our financial stability work is to ensure that the 50 plus can continue working as long as they want to. That's why you're here today, to learn more about these programs and the employers. So we engage with employers to make sure that they're focused on a multi-generational workforce, and to make sure that they demonstrate the value that they place on age diversity and how it helps their bottom line as well. And our core initiative that you've heard about is the AARP Employer Pledge Program. You can see on the slide information about it. We have over 1,000 employers across the country that stand with AARP in affirming the value of experienced workers. It represents about 17 million people in the workforce. And we work with these employers to help them move beyond limited stereotypes about older workers towards an age-friendly workplace, a more age-inclusive workplace. They've been vetted by AARP. They have a good rating with the Better Business Bureau. And over the last 3 years, there have been no class action discrimination suits successfully brought against them. And these companies receive regular communications from AARP. They're encouraged to network with each other, and we offer webinars to help them bolster their support for older workers. Next slide, please. Next slide. So you can go online to search for employers. Kendra, are you able to? Great. Yeah, so you can go online, similar to what Tim described. You can search the 1,000 plus employers that we have here, and I just pulled up a screenshot of some of the Massachusetts ones. We have close to 90 in Massachusetts that have signed the Employer Pledge, and you can search around the country and go straight to their websites. And many of them have the AARP Employer Pledge on their HR pages. So next slide, please. Most importantly today, too, you want to take away that AARP has resources for experienced older workers. We have this job search engine similar to how Tim's that he described, and you can search for employers that are employer pledge signers. You can search for employers that are looking specifically for to hire veterans, and search by zip code. So have that at aarp.org/jobs. Next slide. Coming up, we have resources on aarp.org. I know the black box is in front of that, but it's aarp.org/work. And the upcoming webinar that is tomorrow, you can still register for it, is with a top resume career coach and resume writer. And you can still register by going to aarp.org/work. They're free. You don't have to be an AARP member, and it'll be very useful to help you understand how you can stand out in the job market. In addition, we're working with Skills Builder for Work to test out some new tools that we can make available to job seekers. And I just gave you an example of an article that appears as well on the website. Again, very rich resources for AARP members and non-members. Next slide. There's archived webinars as well. So you can take a look and learn about how to beat the hiring bots, how to prepare for your interview, how to juggle in-person and remote work. There's a lot of archived webinars, again, free to everybody. And I want to point out that we have a very big event coming up on May 26th that is with Carrie Hannon, who is essentially a best-selling author of many, many books on the workplace and the 50 plus. And she's also being called a workplace futurist now, and she's going to share tips for standing out again among job candidates and building rapport with recruiters and interviewers. So to register for that, that website there is also on the last slide that I'll be showing you in a second. And I just want to point out that you can register for that even the day of the event. So just like the one that's tomorrow, you can register today or tomorrow for that one. Next slide. So you'll want to take a look at these websites and spend a good deal of time to understand the AARP resources to support older workers. It is a very big part of our work. AARP has 37 million members across the country and almost 600,000 in Massachusetts, and at least 30% of our members are still working. So we are very much in tune with wanting to provide these resources, in addition to growing the Employer Pledge program that you just heard about. And of course, I'm at the state office. We have a state website. Please check it out at aarp.org/MA and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Back to you, Jody.
Thanks, Kara. Thank you, Tim and Kara. Great resources. And again, I just want to remind everybody, those are all going to be sent out after this webinar concludes. So here's what's going to happen next. We're going to move into a short segment where we're going to introduce and hear from each one of the employers who are joining us today, and I'll introduce them shortly. After that, I'm going to have a conversation with those employer representatives to start to get at some of the concerns they have on the hiring front, what are the opportunities they see, and start to hopefully prompt your thinking about questions you have for these employers. Because after we have that short conversation as a group of panelists, we invite all of you to submit your questions through the chat, the specific questions that you have for any of our panelists today, including Tim or Kara, but also specifically the employers joining us today. So that's sort of our next step. So to kick this off, I'd like to introduce Chris Prout, who represents Benchmark Senior Living. She's the Senior Talent Acquisition Advisor, and we look forward to hearing from you briefly, Chris.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for the invitation today. Benchmark Senior Living is proud to be a certified age-friendly employer. I'll tell you a little bit about our organization. Benchmark Senior Living currently is the largest assisted living provider in the New England market. We have community locations spanning all of the New England states, from Maine to Connecticut and Rhode Island, and our outliers at the current time are in Long Island. We have 2 locations in Long Island. We have a total of 64 communities. Presently, our largest population of communities is in Connecticut and Massachusetts. We're very proud to welcome our 64th location in Hanover, Massachusetts. So anyone that's living in the Hanover area, soon to come, will be actively recruiting, and we welcome anyone on this call to apply to our positions. Positions that we currently are looking to fill at the organization, you can find us on www.benchmarkseniorliving.com. All of our open positions are listed there by city and state. And the positions that we're currently recruiting for, we do have some leadership positions that are open in administration, such as an executive director role who will lead the day-to-day operations of a community. We have HR and business office manager positions that are available. And other leadership positions such as director of nurses. We do have several frontline positions that are open currently throughout all of our states. We're looking actively for CNAs and HHAs. We have receptionist positions that are open, registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, wait staff, maintenance, housekeeping, and activity assistants. So currently our employee population is about 6,000 strong, and we refer to our employees as associates. And our locations are known as buildings. They're called communities. So in terms of our vernacular and our language, we've kind of made a little bit of a change because it's more of a family atmosphere. Tom Grape, who's our founder and CEO, he's just awesome leader, very inspiring. Check out our website and learn a little bit more about Tom Grape's story, but his vision is to be the best at what we do. We are the largest provider of assisted living services in New England. So what does that mean? What do we do? How are we different from like a skilled nursing facility or a rehab? What it is that we do is we basically help our seniors meet their activities of daily living or their ADLs. So in their golden years, what we do, our average age resident is probably in their late 80s. We provide, 3 meals a day, snacks, activities of enrichment for them, and basically we help them with their ADLs, their activities of daily living. Our employees, they're the residents.
I think are we frozen there?
I think she's frozen. Yeah.
Okay, maybe while we try to bring that up, Kendra, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry that Chris froze, but maybe we'll come back to her and we can move to Gail Feeney, Senior Director of Client Care from Mature Caregivers. Gail, are you out there?
I am here. Thank you, Jody. And hopefully I won't freeze. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Gail Feeney, and I am the Senior Director of Client Care with Mature Caregivers. We are located in Waltham, Massachusetts, and Mature Caregivers is a full-service, non-medical, in-home elder care agency. As our name suggests, we recruit and hire individuals over the age of 50 to provide care, companionship, and support to elders. We have care managers on our team who are responsible for developing highly customized care plans, and we follow a thoughtful process when matching caregivers and companions with our clients. Our clientele are spread out throughout Massachusetts, as our employees are as well. I would say our greatest density of clients reside in the greater Boston area, but we have had and continue to have clients as far south as Cohasset, and we've worked with clients out in Worcester. I would say that Mature Caregivers is the perfect place for people over the age of 50 to come and work. Not only are we a certified age-friendly employer, but we value the professionalism and the experience and the skills that older workers bring to the job. We recognize that older workers have a strong work ethic, they are reliable, and of course, what's so important is that results in a high level of customer satisfaction. We offer meaningful and important jobs. I often hear from our employees that it doesn't feel like a job because the work that they are doing, it feels so good and they know that they're making a difference in someone's life. We are actively recruiting for caregiver and companion positions. Caregivers do things like help our clients with their activities of daily living. Chris was just touching on that, similar to the residents of assisted living facilities. And then we also have companionship assignments where you would enjoy socializing with our clients. It might be through local outings or playing games, doing a crossword puzzle, talking about current events, recapping last night's Red Sox game, taking walks, baking cookies. We've even had caregivers that have taken their client to go see a grandchild's play. So it's very rewarding and meaningful, and it helps with the quality of life of the senior. We have opportunities for part-time work, visiting a client, one or two times a week, and then we have opportunities for bigger assignments with more days, longer hours. To give a quick example of that, we happen to be looking now to help a 95-year-old woman who's living in Wellesley, who's fiercely independent, but she's, ready for some support and looking for maybe a 9-hour block where there's a real focus around nutrition, making sure she has meals, helping her to get her trash barrels to the curb, taking a walk in the neighborhood because she wants to stay fit and live longer than 95. And then we have other clients that we literally are with round the clock 24/7 because they struggle with physical limitations, cognitive disabilities, impairments, or some combination of the two. We hire people with very varied backgrounds. Certainly, many have had careers in health services, so maybe they are retired nurses or home health aides, CNAs. But we also have people who come to us with very different backgrounds, careers in financial services, teaching, administrators, and they're looking, for an employment opportunity, but also something that feels good, it's meaningful. And we have folks of very diverse backgrounds that speak different languages, Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole. So we embrace cultural diversity. We enjoy watching our employees and clients share about their lives and experiences. So as I said, we are always actively hiring. I will put in the chat box a link to our website where you can you can read about mature caregivers a little more in depth, but also if you click on the jobs icon, that will bring you directly to our job application. And I hope to talk to some of you attendees soon.
Thank you, Gail. That's terrific. And Christina, I see that you've rejoined us, and I'm sorry that we lost you there for a minute. I didn't know if you had any final remarks before we move on to our next employer that you wanted to draw attention to. And
sure, I'm very sorry about that. My internet had gone out. I apologize.
Living in the Zoom world.
I know, in this world of technology. So my apologies for that. So just, in terms of wrapping up, as I mentioned, we have our newest community that's opening. We're actively looking for folks to fill all our positions, and then also, New England-wide, the positions that everyone saw on the screen, we're actively recruiting for. So we welcome, any and all to apply. You can visit us at www.benchmarkseniorliving.com. Visit our careers page, and you can search for open positions, not only by the location that you're in, or also by job type. And we hope you apply, and I'd love to connect with you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. And why don't you put that link in the chat for our visitors today? So switching gears just a little bit here. I'd next like to welcome Chuck Barisi, President of NRG Services, and Jody Barnaby, who is the Director of Talent Acquisition, Quality, and Safety at NRG. For a quick overview.
Thank you, Jody. Appreciate the time. Yes, Kendra, if you wanted to put that slide up. So good morning, everyone. I'll take a few minutes here and give you an overview of what NRG is and what we do. I describe us as basically a technical services company. We're based in Auburn, Mass, and we have been safely and efficiently supplying high pressure steam and power across multiple industries, for decades. Simply put, we sell, operate, maintain high pressure boilers. We are the largest provider of licensed boiler operators and chief engineers in the Commonwealth. Our customers, for the most part, are what you would describe as essential businesses. They're in pharmaceutical, healthcare, packaging, and that supply chain that we hear about every day on the news, food and beverage, and of course, power generation. We like to refer to ourselves as we are the team that makes the steam. The bottom line is this is a niche industry that has seen some significant growth for a variety of reasons. The pandemic, in our particular case, has created demand as public institutions and private institutions that use steam for production or for heat have had to operate with reduced staff. So therefore, there was greater demand for our services and our equipment. And what we do, the core of our business is, our team is embedded in a customer's location, and they will operate this equipment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So those are the folks that are, on the highways, in the blizzards, trying to get to work to make sure that the power runs and the building's pipes don't freeze, and Moderna has enough pure water to make COVID vaccinations. And I mentioned Moderna, Pfizer, Merck, Bayer, Thermo Fisher. These are a few of the customers that we support round the clock. So that's who we are and what we do for a living. And we have opportunities in operations. We have opportunities in sales. We are now being asked by our customers, because the skilled labor shortage is so great, to consider taking on building maintenance function, which we are actively entering into. And just a note about the profile, because some of you may be thinking about, the physical requirements of a skilled trade and how does that stack up against what we require. Our boiler operators and engineers are essentially monitoring and analyzing data. So this is an industry where if you are a continual learner and you have a bit of math skills, you can participate in well into your 80s. Half of our population is over 50. We have several chief engineers anyway who are in their early 80s. So we practice what we preach, and we do find some of the traits that others have mentioned in the 50+ workforce. In terms of reliability, that is a key requirement for our business. If an operator is standing watch, as we call it, he cannot leave his post until he or she is relieved. So therefore, when you are scheduled to be on a shift, reliability is key. So it's the critical nature of our business. So that's who we are and what we do, and these are the positions that we currently offer. The other thing worth mentioning is there is a license requirement from the state of Massachusetts. Kendra, if you want to switch to the next slide. And there are several post-secondary educational resources that you can leverage to acquire a license in relatively short order. It is an exam issued by the Department of Fire Services, both written and oral. And right now, the state of Massachusetts has a grant program for employers that will help you fund that education should you have an interest. So it's a relatively short and inexpensive path to a career, a second career, a third career, or a primary career. But it does require an investment, an educational investment.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, all of you. This is so interesting because, we have three different types of employers, but one of the themes that I heard all of you talk about or touch on is this issue of reliability. And I think that's one of the really compelling parts of these age-friendly employer initiatives is tapping into that notion of reliability of an older workforce. And Tim mentioned it in his beginning remarks as well. So one of the questions I have for each of you, of our employer representatives, and I hope that if you're listening to this webinar, this prompts some questions that you may have too. How do you perceive, how do you tell prospective employees about that important piece of the puzzle? Like, how is that baked into your recruiting efforts so that it's made obvious to job seekers that that's a skill you really value? Maybe we could start with, well, let's just start with you, Chuck, because we ended with you on the last segment. You know, how do you do that specifically? Because it sounds like it's really critical. And, you know, having the skill set to understand when a problem has arisen and you have to kind of elevate that up the food chain. How do you communicate that to employees? Or maybe that's a question for your colleague, Jody, on the talent acquisition side, but either one.
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that one. I think, yeah, if it's a new entrant into the industry, you know, we describe the nature of the position, and we'll also take them to the site so they'll get a feel for, you know, the equipment. And again, it may not be the particular site that we have in mind for that individual, but they'll get to see the equipment. They'll get to see the building management system. You know, boiler operation was once described to me as, you know, 98% boredom and 2% sheer panic. And it's the 2% when the alarms are buzzing and steam is hissing and bells are ringing and the screen's flashing that you have to, and there's nothing, there's no substitute for seeing that firsthand. So we tend to expose folks to that side of the business. We also make it pretty clear in terms of what it means to stay and watch and how, in fact, you know, that plays, you know, I guess the best way to describe it is kind of be sensitive to your teammates, right? Because at the end of the day, if I can't be relieved until you relieve me and you're 4 hours late, then I'm here for 4 hours, right?
Yep.
Because the customer nor the Department of Fire Services will allow us to leave that boiler or that turbine unattended.
Got it.
So the short answer is we try to demonstrate to them by sharing experiences. Jody's excellent at that. Our Jody Barnaby, and Jody is both a third-class engineer and an operator, has served as an operator. She's got real life experience you can share, you know, with candidates as they come through.
Great, thank you. And I guess, Gail, that would be a similar question. Obviously, you're not dealing with boilers, but you're dealing with real life human beings. And so the same concept applies, you know, employees that recognize the responsibility and the reliability that's kind of inherent in these jobs. Maybe just talk a little bit about that and it's sort of how that works on your end.
Sure. So, you know, certainly reliability is critical because we are dealing with human lives here. And I guess what I'd say is, you know, no two situations are alike as far as, you know, the folks that we are working with and serving. So back to my earlier point of just this very sort of in-depth and thoughtful process that we follow, it's twofold. We are doing that with our clients and their family members to have a clear sense of, you know, what are they going to need on any given day for care in order to have not just a good quality of life, but basic needs met. You know, in the lives of these elders, you know, sometimes it's providing relief to a family member who maybe, you know, needs the caregiver to come in so they can, you know, go to work or, you know, have some respite. So we just do our very best to be very clear and very descriptive when we're doing any, you know, customized job postings. And then that sort of morphs into when we're screening applicants for any specific caregiver or companion assignment, we want it to be a good fit. It has to be a good fit. And there is a lot of factors that go in. It could be geographics, it could be scheduling, but a lot of it is, you know, are they a good personality fit? Are they going to connect on a level that's going to be successful all around? So I think it's what makes us sort of stand out is just the amount of effort we put in that regard.
Yeah, finding that best fit.
Mhm.
Chris, do you want to add anything from a benchmark perspective? Obviously, a bigger organization, and I'm guessing maybe a little bit of the benefit there would be sort of the organizational size and, how do you guys market these jobs and how do you communicate the value you place on older workers?
Absolutely. It's a really good question. I think, some of the same aspects that Gail had mentioned, I think apply to us and our community locations, and how I guess we convey that message is through our values. So we're called to care, the human connection. It's people taking care of people, which is really, really important. And the continuity of care, we want to ensure that, as our caregivers or anyone that's working in any of our communities, as you get to know the residents, and the families, it's just such an important part of their lives. So I think at the end of the day, that continuity of care plays a big role, and how we're able to demonstrate that or have the applicants see this in action, or candidates in action, is something called the job preview. During our interview process, you meet with the hiring manager, you meet with our executive director. So we do our best to kind of articulate to you why it's so important that we're looking for that continuity of care. But then the job preview gives you an opportunity to get a realistic job preview of what that job is like and see someone in action performing some of those duties.
Yep.
And so you see and you make that connection of why it's so important, or that human aspect that comes in. And, I think that that's been very, very successful for us. And that is part of our interviewing process, whether it's, the dishwasher or it's the executive director that we're hiring. We want to expose everyone to what it's like to work in our community and how important it is to make that connection with our residents and the families and staff as well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Jody, I have a question for you, because you handle talent acquisition. And so you got a universe here of, there's about almost 100 people on this webinar. What stands out to you when you see job applicants and you meet with particularly job seekers who are 50 and older? Like, what are some of the qualities or the attributes, or maybe even some of the skills that really stand out when you're sifting through resumes and talking to candidates? Because I think that would be really helpful if I was sitting on the other side of this recording to hear directly from a talent manager.
Yeah, so certainly I have found that, particularly in the 50+ market, the experience that they bring is not only something that we value for equipment, but also as a mentor to our younger employees as well. So kind of that ability, even though you're working with, this equipment, it is a people-based business. So having that interaction of being able to share your experiences, what you've gone through, maybe some, equipment that you have seen in the past, and being able to help them has been a huge asset to us.
Yep. Okay, that's great. Any particular tips for job seekers that any one of you, and I'll start again with you, Jody, just to, since you're on the roll here, what if you had a couple of tips for job seekers would you recommend? And Gail and Chris, I'd love for you to think about that. And then I'd like to move to questions from our audience. So Jody, do you have any, like, maybe two things that have stood out to you in addition to, being able to communicate that experience and ability to mentor? Is there anything specific from a job hunter perspective that you wish job hunters knew?
I think that, certainly with our industry needing the license and all of that, being open to different experiences and looking at, maybe you didn't see yourself going down this avenue, but being open to looking what that could look like, because it is a career path that, regardless of your age, you can start at any time.
Right. So recognizing that career changer in the applicant and the openness to change.
Yeah, the flexibility.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. Sort of the flexible mindset is something that would resonate with you as a hiring manager. Gail, anything that comes to mind for you that you wish job seekers knew if they wanted to get your attention?
Well, I think just in general, my recommendation is just like stay positive, right? Because you go through a lot of emotions and nervousness when you're an older person looking for work opportunities. I think, just drawing from your experience and, showing that you're adaptable and open and ready to learn something new. I think, for mature caregivers specifically, I've seen such beautiful outcomes from people that have joined our team that maybe didn't have the skill set from a past career per se, but they lived it personally. They had a parent or a neighbor or a loved one that they, lent a helping hand to whatever degree, and just sort of the joy of that experience and how they could bring that and have that help somebody else.
Thank you. Okay, great. And Chris, just any final words on that before we go to some questions from our audience?
Yeah, very similar to Gail. I think it's just sharing your personal story. This age group typically has a family member who is aging, and when I'm connecting with someone and they talk about the experiences they've had, or the peace of mind they've had when they've placed someone in an assisted living community, and just that they understand what it's like to make that decision, and then to be at relief that their loved one is being taken care of. And so just talk about their own experience. Be authentic, be yourself. I mean, to me, that really resonates with me, and it's just so touching to hear that. I love hearing the stories, and it's just it's very inspiring to me.
Yeah, great. Okay, great. Well, thank you all. I'm going to remind everybody who's listening that we really want your questions, and specific or general are fine. I'm going to kick off with one that I saw come in through the chat, and thank you, Kara, for pushing that up to the top of my chat. All three of you have spoken about this need for reliability because you're in, mission critical roles, whether it's human care or boiler care. It's a similar dynamic. And that's what's awesome about being an older, wiser, more reliable worker. But we've had some questions in the chat about flexibility and the opportunity to maintain your life to some extent without becoming, stuck. And so I wanted to ask you about part-time and how that works in your organizations, because it's a question that comes up a lot for older workers. So maybe I can start with, we'll go the other way. Chris.
Absolutely. So we do have many part-time flexible positions that are available. I did see in the chat some, work from home opportunities. Some of our corporate-based positions, we do offer hybrid work arrangements. So you're coming into our corporate office, which is located in Waltham, Massachusetts, and it's 2 days a week, and there's a work from home 3 days a week. I mean, we try to be flexible, but the part-time, I mean, you could, if you're interested in just working mornings or just in the evenings or just on the weekends. I mean, we have positions to meet everyone's needs. And we even we have third shift positions. So our CNAs and HHAs are working on the overnight. So my mom used to work an overnight shift, and, we have all schedules to meet everyone's needs, very flexible.
Thank you. That's great. Jody, do you want to comment on that?
So very similar in our roles, we offer part-time. We work around your schedule. So if you are looking for something on the weekends, if you're looking for days, nights, locations, we are located everywhere. So we have multiple, we don't offer remote because you have to be there in person, but we're very flexible scheduling options.
Great. Gail?
Yeah, I'm glad this question came up because we frequently have a need for sort of last minute care needs, temporary, or to cover for maybe the regular caregiver who's, needs to take time off, vacation, illness, what have you. So what we do is I think what we do great at is sort of staying in communication with our caregivers and companions that are in what I call our active status. So we send out almost daily what we call care finders with a little snapshot of, the opportunity that we have, the location, what the duties are, what the day and time are. And then we look to hear from caregivers, and you really only need to respond to that if it's something you're interested in learning more about, or to let us know that you're available. And then similarly, we pick up the phone all the time. We say, oh, we have somebody in, Braintree, which maybe isn't a high density area for us, but we know we've got a great caregiver in our active status. So you better believe we're going to pick up the phone and call
Right.
that person and say, hey, we want to know if you're available for XYZ assignment.
Great.
And we also have non-traditional assignments as well. Like we do a lot of transportation. So
Mhm.
I get that maybe not everybody attending this webinar wants to be a caregiver or a companion, but maybe you wouldn't mind driving somebody to a doctor's appointment or elsewhere. So it's worth giving me a
A
call.
lot of sounds like it. Okay, this is a great question actually that came in because I hear about this and it makes me nervous. So maybe some of our listeners would feel nervous about this too. We've all heard about bots in the process, in the application process and recruiting that can screen out older workers. And so a question is, what is the screening process, and do you guys use ATS? And if so, what would you suggest to workers over 50 to get around those barriers and to try to sort of circumnavigate to getting in your radar? And so let's start with Jody.
So our process, a lot of people will call the office or respond to a job posting, and it will come directly to me. So we start with that human interaction immediately, setting up a time to do a phone call where we can discuss what the opportunity is and go over your background.
Got it.
And then we move on from that process.
Got it. Okay, great. Jody, Gail or Chris, do you guys have a similar approach?
Very similar. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing that's bot specific. So we too have the human interaction and provide the steps needed to get the ball rolling.
Great. Awesome. Chris?
So our applicant tracking system, we don't disqualify anyone. We have a human being on the other end looking at every single applicant that's coming in. And we also, at all of our locations, we welcome walk-ins. So, anyone can visit any of our communities. And even if you don't have a resume prepared, I mean, that's not a barrier for us. You can fill out an application, you can drop off a resume. Many of our communities would welcome anyone, visiting them and, making it a point to spend some time and provide an on-the-spot interview like right away. So if you are interested in a healthcare job with us, please, please, please visit any one of our communities. We want you to come join us. Be part of the Benchmark team.
Okay, this is also a great question. Thank you, Chris. This is great. But, and I don't know who this applies to in the audience or just more broadly, but we have so many workers here in Boston and throughout the Commonwealth who were employed in skilled jobs in their countries of origin. However, upon arriving in the US, English is a second language. So talk to me a little bit, and let's start with you on this one, Gail, about hiring older adults with English as a second language and how that plays into your hiring processes, or if it does.
Yeah, no, I think I touched on it earlier that, to generalize, like we embrace diversity. We have a very diverse group of employees. And, while we talk in depth with clients and family members about, who's going to be the right fit based on skill set and interests, we also want to know what might some of the barriers be. But these are people that are needing and wanting care for so many different reasons that at the end of the day, they embrace it too. So we don't find that it's, a big challenge for us.
Great. Okay, thanks. Jody? Maybe talk a little bit about whether that's, does your organization have a lot of employees who are second language English speakers, or how does this work in your recruiting?
So we definitely do, and we have found it has not been a barrier on our end as well. If they've got the experience and are able to communicate, we have several employees where it is a second language and have found no issues.
Great. Chris?
Definitely, we have hired many individuals that fit that. And all I'd like to say is we hire for heart and we train for skill.
Got it. Okay, so here's a very specific question, and I think this is great. This is a resume question that one of our attendees has asked. How does one represent 40 plus years of experience on one page in a meaningful way? Like, that's actually a really great question, because it's hard to pull together a snapshot of an entire career in a way that's going to resonate, particularly if you're a career changer. And I think that what we've heard from all three employers today is that career changers are welcome. So what would you do? What would you do, Chris, tell us first, like what has stuck out to you when you've seen a resume come through the pipeline and you can tell there's just like so much behind that one page? What struck out to you?
I think for the resumes that have stuck out with for me is when folks kind of list their skills and their experiences, and then where they've worked kind of at the end. But just kind of disclose everything that they've done, maybe first, and then at the end, they're just putting, maybe where they've been employed. So they're highlighting all the skills, all the experience that they have. And then the where they've worked is kind of like, it's important, but it's not as important as what they're offering. And to me, when I look at that, you could put it all pretty much on one page, and you just get an idea of what that person can bring, in terms of a skill set and experience to your organization.
Got it. Jody, anything you would add to that, or that you've seen that's worked from a resume perspective coming through?
I definitely agree with what Chris said. And I think for us, when we get the resume and then we set up that initial call, I always ask, tell me about your time at this employer and the skills. So using it as a talking point where you can certainly elaborate from there.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So I think the message is, you don't need to think of it like a resume when you're at an earlier stage in your career and you're trying to necessarily impress with the organizations you've worked with. What you're really trying to impress with is the skills that you've gained over the lifetime of that career. Gail, anything else you would want to add to that?
No, I think they hit on it. I personally am a big fan of, I think they call it like the professional summary, which is sometimes at the top of the resume. That can be a great place to try and put it more in a narrative sense.
Yeah.
And then using the resume for, 2-3 bullet points that draw on the skills, but the goal then being get into the interview and have the opportunity to really speak to that.
Talk about those things. That's great advice. Okay, so here's another question that I think is really interesting. I see it sort of the theme of this question peppered into a couple of questions, but it has to do with mentoring, because I think we've talked a little bit about the role that mentoring can play when hiring older workers, because you can imagine a scenario where not only are they bringing these valuable skills to the party, but also having the ability to mentor younger workers, maybe not so much in a specific industry, but in terms of, workplace behaviors and career development and all of those important things. So how do you think about that? I mean, I think the answer is you do think about that, and it's really important, but how do you pull that out of potential employees when you're meeting them, or how do you promote that as a skill that you value specifically in your job listings, or to make potential career changers, older workers aware that you really value that? Chris, why don't we start with you? Kind of just keep popping around.
Sure. So I think we have a mentoring program. Anyone that starts with Benchmark, you're partnered up with somebody that I think is, seasoned, and they've demonstrated that they're very capable of the job. So, I think we demonstrate that by, when we hire someone, that we're doing that. So usually, obviously, I think it's a learning both ways. I see like the younger workers coming in. Sometimes there's some inhibitions about, starting conversations because they're more in tune with the technology. So I think, for me, it's the mature worker that's able to show, a younger or someone that's new entering the workforce, what's important about our business. I mean, we're a relationship business, and I think that there's a lot of learning and, sharing. And then vice versa with the technology piece too. There's that sharing. So I think we demonstrate it based on, when we hire someone, the mentoring that's key for us. And I think it ends up going both ways. And you can learn from
that's a good point.
Either way, yeah.
Gail?
Yeah, similarly, I would say, we have had situations where you just have a standout employee and you draw from that talent to serve as sort of like a lead caregiver.
Yeah.
So maybe they're training somebody newer, or, they're kind of mentoring that person to take over an assignment that they might move on to something else. We've also had employees that have transitioned from working in the field, doing more of a direct care, to helping out in the office, whether it be in a scheduling capacity or helping with recruitment or working on a short-term project. So different opportunities there.
And you mentioned that narrative in the resume, because as a follow-up question I see coming through, how do you suggest highlighting mentoring on a resume? I mean, it feels to me like something that would make a lot of sense in a narrative component to the resume, that's something that a prospective job seeker wants or has had experience mentoring with, and just kind of come out and say it. Would that
Yes, I would agree with that.
come
Yeah.
out and say it? Jody, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. Certainly having that open communication about what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you're looking to get out of an opportunity
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier to kind of match up and follow through on those.
So maybe from a hiring perspective, it's literally come out and say it. I mean, I think one of the things about looking for jobs with age-friendly employers specifically is that you don't have to wonder if these employers are welcoming of older adults. You know they are. So you can come out and celebrate what makes you unique as an older worker and just not feel like you have to hide it, which is so often the case because we have this kind of ageist framework that everybody's operating in. So I think that's like just another reminder to people listening that this universe of age-friendly employers is really compelling from a job-seeking perspective, because you just get to skip that one step. Okay, so another question, which is kind of the elephant. Let's talk about COVID-19 and requirements in your job settings about compliance with COVID-19 requirements or whatnot. So Jody, maybe you can tell us what, if anything, is required.
Yeah, so certainly where we are resident contractors at customer facilities, we follow their requirements. So we have some customers that do require that you be fully vaccinated, some that do not. So it is site specific. We follow the current CDC guidelines and customer parameters.
Great. Gail?
Yeah, I would say we're probably 98% fully vaccinated employees, and we have a very small percentage, if any, that would be willing to accept. I mean, we're dealing with the elderly population who's most vulnerable. So, yeah, I would say that's the situation. And for our caregivers who, before they report to work on any given day, they are required to answer a COVID questionnaire so that we can ensure that they are feeling healthy and well enough to report to work. And so it will, it'll immediately communicate to the office if somebody answers a question and it red flags them.
Oh,
interesting. And then we work to address that quickly.
Got it. Okay, great. That's good to know. Good for everybody. Chris?
So being that we're in healthcare, very similar to Gail, vaccinated and boosted, we do look at medical and disability exemptions. Most of our residents, almost 100% of our residents have been vaccinated and boosted. We've offered clinics along the way for vaccines and boosters, flu shots. So becoming part of an employee of Benchmark, that's afforded to all of our associates. We allow them the opportunity to do the boosting on site and not have to worry about going outside of the workplace to get that done.
Got it. Okay, just switching gears just a little bit, and I'm not sure about this one. So you guys are, we've had a couple questions in the chat about remote, and I know that your businesses are very sort of physical touch oriented, in terms of human caregiving or taking care of a specific weather. But do your organizations have other job opportunities? I think, Chris, you might have mentioned there's lots of other types of job opportunities in the organization. So I'd love to hear about that. Is there a remote option? And Tim, you had mentioned that you have some thoughts on the remote job option too. So let's maybe start with Tim, and then we'll see what we hear from our employers.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in on this one. A couple of comments. First of all, through COVID, the biggest learning that employers had was that remote work isn't so bad after all. And that's had an extraordinary impact on people's behavior and plans around retirement. In fact, people are talking about delaying their retirement based on this fact alone. So remote work is available prevalently at a lot of the job postings that you'll find on retirementjobs.com or the AARP job site. And these are in lots of different categories. So customer service moved online during COVID, and a lot of it is going to stay that way. Those are really good jobs, particularly flexible, part-time, and very, they're service-oriented jobs. They're working with people, often over the phone or Zoom. So they're not sort of manufacturing, heavy lifting jobs per se. So they're a very good option. Another category that's also popular is tutoring. And that's one that lends itself really, really well to remote work via Zoom and what have you. But on retirementjobs.com, like I said earlier, there are hundreds of thousands of jobs, and most of them have a remote option.
Great, thank you. So that's sort of broadly speaking, where can you find those remote job opportunities, which I hope addresses, because we've seen a couple of those questions in the chat. Specifically with our employers here today, are there remote job opportunities with your organizations that you want to call attention to? Jody?
So our opportunities are all in person. We
Okay.
don't have a remote option.
Great, fair enough. Gail?
I would say for the caregiver companionship, same,
Yeah.
however, our office staff has had the benefit of working remotely and being successful at that.
Great. Oh, right, exactly. Chris?
So our corporate-based positions, we do offer a hybrid work model right now, working in the office, corporate office in Waltham 2 days a week, 3 days from home. Our community-based positions are live because they are providing care or servicing our residents that are living within our communities.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So we've got sort of 3 specific organizations with some remote potentially possible look at that, or as some sort of a hybrid environment, but other jobs just by definition are more in-person jobs. But definitely retirementjobs.com is a great resource for finding other remote opportunities. This is a question that I think comes up a lot, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We're often, it's often referred to as just older adults, or we say, people older than 50 who are job seekers, but 50 is very different from 70, or 65 is different from 75. How do you guys navigate that specific question? While employers are looking for potential employees over 50, how do you feel about job seekers over 70 who are still willing and able to work, want to work, maybe only part-time, but what's your thought on that? And maybe Gail, I'll lead off with you.
I would say bring it on. I love it. We have a lot of peer matches, and sometimes the caregiver companions are very close in age to one another. And again, it's just, I think mostly for these companionship assignments, it's like a friendship develops. It's mutually beneficial. Because both, perhaps have experienced similar things, whether it be loss of a loved one or, career paths that they can relate to, family issues. So I think I would say it's probably about just finding the best match based on what the person is looking for.
Got it. Thank you. Jody, how do you address this issue of older adults not being a monolith? There's lots of, different skills and different capacities.
Yeah, so we have a good majority of our employees are in that 65 plus category, where if you are looking to work and are able to work, we absolutely keep you on as long as you want to work.
Got it. Okay, terrific to hear. Chris?
Similar to Gail, we have, individuals in their 70s, 65 and older. I think we have a caregiver that's in their 80s still providing care, that's been, with Benchmark for quite a period of time. So if you're willing and able, we'd love to have you.
Okay, terrific. That's what I figured the answer was going to be. Okay, 2 specifically tactical questions, and I love these because it's like brass tacks. Tim, a question for you. Will those remote jobs that you referenced that come through retirementjobs.com look like a retirement job on our resumes?
Will they look like a retirement job on the resume?
I guess it's up to the job seeker, right? How you put them on the resume. But I think the job seeker is asking if retirementjobs.com is the employer. And I think the answer is, or I know the answer is, that no, it's a search engine. So I don't know if we want to explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, retirementjobs.com is you can think of it as Indeed for people over 50. So this is a repository of job listings where the employers are seeking people over the age of 50 specifically. So I think, no, you wouldn't be talking about these as a retirement job per se.
Right. Okay, super. And then the same question came up twice, but it's relevant. So number one, Jody, what is the entry-level salary range for boiler operators?
So depending upon location, usually that's anywhere between $25 and $30 an hour.
Okay, got it. And then for Gail and Chris, maybe you can ask, I will ask you similarly, sort of entry-level caregiver job pay rates.
I would say for mature caregivers, we're typically in the range of a starting hourly wage of 17 an hour. And we have, depending on the complexity of the situation, it might go up to 20. We might also have opportunities for staffing incentives, things like that.
Great. Chris?
So for caregivers, it would be primarily between 17 to 20. We do also go above that if you have the experience level. Non-clinical, the non-care positions, everyone's starting at a minimum of $15 an hour.
Okay, great. Thank you. I love sort of big, broad questions, but also just very specific. Those are smart questions to be asking. So, okay, so we have just a couple of minutes left. And so I guess what I'd love to hear from each one of you is, what's your biggest pain point when you're out there trying to hire people? Is it getting people in the door? Is it finding employees? What is the biggest pain point? And I think in articulating the biggest pain point, we might be able to give listeners a sense for pathways to helping solve that pain point for you. So Chris, what's your biggest pain point?
I think it is applicant flow.
Applicant flow, okay.
So I think that's part of it. So and the other piece will then be people actually showing up the job, in terms of an interview or completing the steps necessary. So those seem to be the two biggest pain points. I think the pandemic has definitely cut back our candidate pool, so to speak. And then, ghosting is certainly an issue. We'll have folks scheduled for an interview or even accepted a job offer and they may not start on day one.
Right. Okay. Got it. So again, if you're out there listening, this is so easy, right? You just show up. And also just if you have this sense that, oh, I don't know if I'm qualified for this job, the answer is talk to you because you probably are in some capacity or another, and you're interested in talking to them no matter what. Gail, what's your biggest pain point?
Yeah, I think I agree with Chris on this one with the applicant flow. And then I think, once we onboard people, given our service area is broad and where that person might reside are we going to have something that, works for that employee? And so I think that coupled with the fact that we're dealing with people's lives, right? So they might go into the hospital and service might be suspended. And then that person, maybe we try to keep them working if that's what they want, or maybe, to fill in for another thing or work on a temporary assignment. So every situation is different.
Yep. Okay, great. And we'll finish up with you, Jody. What's your biggest pain point that you wish job seekers understood?
I definitely agree. The qualified applicants coming in has certainly declined, and showing up is a huge piece because that has been a big problem of scheduling the interviews and then just no call, no show, no follow-up.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's such a consistent theme across these two different industries. But, one of our attendees is saying, wow, this is such an opportunity. And you may say, I already do this. But I think this idea of we recognize that candidate pool and reliability are so valued, really trying to think about how you emphasize those traits in the outbound marketing to recruit those candidates is a recommendation from one of our listeners, that so many employers don't demonstrate those as really important skill sets that they're looking for. And so it's an opportunity for age-friendly employers to really lean into that in a way that helps to address those pain points that you guys referenced. So thank you all very much. This fascinating conversation. Thank you to everybody who's been submitting their questions. These are really great questions. And I hope we have the opportunity to do this again soon. And I thank you to Christina and Jody and Gail. And I'm going to hand it back to Doug for our final wrap up, but I also want to remember to thank Tim and Kara too for teeing up both of these programs, the AARP Pledge and the Certified Age-Friendly Employer Program. So thank you to all of you for a great conversation.
Thank you, Jody, and I'm going to thank you for doing a wonderful job as moderator for today's program. I don't know why I'm confusing those two words. So let me echo Jody's thanks to Chuck and to Jody and to Chris and to Gail and for the wonderful information you've been able to give us, and also to Kara and Tim for setting us up by talking about the two programs that they are very much a part of. Now I have one last question for all of you, and that is, did you hear anything today that will make a difference in your job search? Can you let us know in the chat what your thoughts were about today's program and any suggestions you have about future programs like this? We love to take that information into account as we plan future programs. And someone asked a question about being able to copy specific websites in the chat. And I just want to remind everyone that we will be providing this information, but if you want it now, you can save the chat. And you do that by going to the three dots that are just to the right of where you enter information into the chat, and you'll see an option to save the chat, and you can download that immediately and have access to all of that information. As noted earlier, this session has been recorded, and we'll send you a link in a few days so that you can refer to it, share it, listen to it again, and it will also include all of the information that has been shared today, including the slide deck. Do you want to put up the slides again, Kendra? I want to thank AARP Massachusetts and retirementjobs.com for sponsoring today's webinar and for their strong support of our work, as well as their participation in developing today's webinar. Finally, we hope you will take a look at the Encore Boston Network website, because there are lots of great resources there as well. In particular, I want to call attention to a page on job search called Mastering the Job Search for People Over 50. This is recordings of a series of webinars that we did about 18 months ago. Still very relevant and very helpful in terms of guiding a job search, particularly for people over 50. Also, our page on age-friendly employers, which includes recordings, it will include the recording of this program, but also includes recordings of the previous four and all the slides and information that were shared at that time. So there's a repository there that you can go back to. And then other information about career invention, career reinvention, alternative ways to work, and being your own boss. And of course, while you're there, sign up for our monthly newsletter that always includes information about job search and events that are related to job searches for people over 50. And as I mentioned earlier, consider joining Encore Boston Network as a member. I also want to call out the resources that are available from organizations that we collaborated with to bring you today's program. Kara talked about the amazing resources that are available on the AARP websites, and we'll share those with you. And of course, Tim also shared information from retirementjobs.com, the agefriendly.org website, and so on. We'll share all of that as well. But I also want to call your attention to 50 Plus Job Seekers in Massachusetts, which has ongoing programs. Every week, there's something going on between October and June, and they have some great programs coming up this next month, as well as Operation Able, which provides training and placement for people who meet their requirements, and you can learn about those information sessions that are held every other week. And again, we'll provide links to that coming up. So I want to finally thank again our sponsors, AARP Massachusetts and retirementjobs.com, and thank all of you for joining us today, and hope you have a wonderful afternoon.